Hi there, and welcome back to Mind, Body, and Beyond. If you're new, this is a space where we discuss everything related to mindset, health, and productivity. So if you're interested, make sure to follow and stick around. I publish every Sunday to provide you with fresh, exciting content to help you elevate your life and achieve your goals. Today, we're talking about dopamine. You hear about it all the time, on the news, in self-development content, in books, but what really is dopamine? I recently listened to a talk by famous neuroscientist TJ Power. You might have heard of him. He does a lot of work on the different hormones, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, but also about how there's sort of an evolutionary mismatch between how dopamine was used in our bodies when we were hunter-gatherers for the majority of the human existence versus our current lifestyles. And he went through different steps that we can take to recharge on our dopamine. So today I'm here to share that with you. Hopefully it will have a positive impact on your life and your motivation. First, we should understand concretely what dopamine is, because there are a lot of misconceptions about this online. And here on Mind, Body, and Beyond, we want to view everything from a scientific, factual perspective. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter and a hormone that is involved in motivation and attention span. So those are the two main things that it does. Its purpose is basically to reward us for effortful actions and to motivate us to do difficult things that will bring us value. For example, in the past when we were hunter-gatherers, that would have been things like hunting, gathering, foraging, building, all that kind of stuff that might not seem entertaining in the beginning, but that was necessary for our survival. The function of dopamine is to reward us for these difficult actions so that we keep doing them because they are necessary for our survival. In our current daily lives, this might look like when you go to the grocery store, for example. It's an action that doesn't necessarily seem pleasant in the beginning, but once you do it and you're done with it, you actually feel good because now you have something to eat when you open the fridge. And dopamine plays a crucial role in the reward pathway of your brain, which we've discussed in previous episodes already, which is a system that makes sure that if you do an action and get a positive response after doing it, you'll be motivated to repeat that action. When dopamine is released after receiving a positive stimulus, then your brain associates the action with a positive stimulus in return. And so now it's going to want to do more of that initial action to get more of those rewards. So that dopamine that we got from hunting, for example, and that we may get now from things like going to the grocery store is the long, healthy dopamine, right? It doesn't come instantly. You have to do the difficult action and then the levels of dopamine slowly build up, right? It doesn't come as an instant rush. You have to do the difficult action and then you get rewarded for that action, which incentivizes you to do it again later. But nowadays, we can get these quick rushes of dopamine that come from scrolling and from eating sugar or consuming alcohol. And this is what is often referred to as the cheap dopamine. When you do things like scrolling or eating sugar, things that bring you that cheap dopamine, the levels of dopamine in your body go up really fast once you start doing the activity. And then when you stop, your body wants to bring your levels of dopamine back to homeostasis, which is basically a balance. So the levels of dopamine drop down far below your normal level, which leads you to crave that dopamine even more and then keep repeating that action at whatever it is, scrolling, eating sugar, alcohol. And that's why you get addicted to those activities. Imagine you graphed the levels of dopamine when somebody did something like going to the grocery store or when somebody was scrolling. When the person would go to the grocery store, the levels of dopamine would slowly build up and then slowly come back down to the normal baseline level. Versus when you scroll, you get a super high rush of dopamine and then after it charges down and then comes back to the normal state. And as I said before, that low level of dopamine leads us to become addicted to those activities that give us that high rush of dopamine. Okay, now that we understand what dopamine is and what its effect on our motivation is, now we can understand what low dopamine and what high dopamine are and what their effects are. So, low dopamine leads to demotivation and to distraction. Conversely, high dopamine leads to being more motivated and being hyper-focused. So we can now discuss some causes of low dopamine and then some things that you can do and some habits that you can implement into your life to increase your levels of dopamine. So you'll end up feeling more motivated and more focused in your daily life. Some causes of low dopamine are things like eating sugar, vaping, smoking, socials, which includes all types of scrolling and short form content, and alcohol. All these things you know are bad for you, but because they bring you that dopamine that you, in a way, crave, you keep doing these activities, and that's what gets you addicted. But all these activities are not activities that require effort on your part. You can literally just open your phone and open an app, and within a couple clicks, you're already scrolling. So if you want to achieve higher levels of dopamine, you're going to have to do more of these activities that require effort, patience, and willpower on your part. And while that may be hard in the beginning, that's what's going to give you that longer, more valuable dopamine at the end. So here are 5 science-proven steps to increase your levels of dopamine. The first one is to spend less time on your phone. And this doesn't necessarily have to be all tech. In this case, for increasing your levels of dopamine, it's really about not scrolling in the morning and not engaging in activities that give you that cheap dopamine as often as you do now. So give yourself some time right in the morning after you wake up and then right before you go to bed where you're not going to engage in any scrolling or any activities that provide you with that cheap dopamine. Instead, you could wake up, go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, make your bed, stretch, work out, go for a walk. And in the evening, instead of scrolling, you can journal, you can do skincare, read a book, stretch. There are so many things that we can do instead of scrolling and that would actually be more productive and bring us closer to our goals. Tip number 2 is to have discipline. As I said before, to increase your levels of dopamine, you're going to have to do difficult tasks or tasks that require effort on your part. And to do that, you're going to need to have some discipline, otherwise you're never going to get them done. So what might this look like? It can look like cleaning a room in your house, organizing your room. It can look like cooking a meal for yourself instead of always taking out. Or it can just be keeping the promises you make to yourself on a daily basis and doing what you say you're going to do. Tip 3 is to take cold water showers. So at the end of your shower, you turn the knob all the way to the cold side, take deep breaths, count to 30, and then you can get out. But this stimulates the hypothalamus, a survival part of the brain, and it has been proven to raise your levels of dopamine by 2.5 times for at least 2 hours after the shower. That's much more than how much scrolling increases your levels of dopamine, and you won't get that dopamine crash after the activity. While cold showers can initially be uncomfortable, I know, if you do it, then you're putting in the hard effort, which is going to lead you to get that healthier dopamine for a longer period of time than scrolling. Next, there's having a purpose or a clear goal that's going to motivate you. And the reason that this works is that if you have a clear goal, then it's going to push you to work towards your other little goals and not do unproductive actions like scrolling when you wake up. You're going to think twice before you pick up your phone and scroll because you know that you're working towards this goal, and you can ask yourself, is scrolling actually going to bring me closer or farther away from that goal? Should I be working on creating that healthy dopamine or just getting that instant gratification from that cheap dopamine? So this big goal can be related to work or health or creativity. It can be anything really, as long as you have a goal in mind that's guiding you and making sure that you're making the right decisions. Finally, tip number 5 is enter flow state. I have a whole episode about how to enter flow state in work, but this doesn't necessarily have to be related to work. We can all enter flow state and it doesn't have to be through work or through studying. It can be arts, cleaning a particular room, listening to music, doing some sports, cooking a meal, reading a book. There's so many different ways that you can enter flow state, and that's going to generate some of that more valuable, healthy dopamine. It usually takes around 15 minutes to enter flow state, so to be able to stay focused for that amount of time, you're going to have to work on your attention span. And this is where actually the first tip is going to come in handy, the one about taking time away from your phone. Because having those quick boosts of dopamine reduces our attention span since we're just getting that dopamine so fast. And so we become impatient when we have to do a longer task that's going to take more effort. So working on your attention span is going to allow you to enter flow state more easily, and it's going to make you more likely to be able to stay focused and concentrated for a long period of time. And that will in turn provide you with a more healthy dopamine. So while the function of dopamine was originally more tailored to our hunter-gatherer lifestyles and not our current sedentary lives, there are still ways that we can increase our levels of these hormones in our current lives to boost our motivation and increase our attention span. And that brings us to the end of this episode. If you learned something new, please let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Mind, Body, and Beyond, and I'll see you in the next one.